The Omen has been a staple of Schecter's lineup for as long as I can remember knowing about the brand, but does this striking new take on the formula, the Omen Elite, bring this guitar to a modern level of quality and playability? My dudes, I've been playing this guitar non-stop for a few weeks now, and there's a lot to like about it and a little bit that I don't. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the channel, mate. It's so good to see you. I'm Jack, and in this video I want to talk to you about my experience with this, the Schecter Omen Elite. This is the hardtail 7-string version in this sick looking blue burst that I've just realised is incredibly dusty. Give me a second. This range was released in a variety of colours and configurations back in 2020, and they've added a few more options to the range since then, including a multi-scale and an 8-string. The Omen shape itself though goes all the way back to January 2012 and has been a massive success for Schecter since then. But if we're honest, they were getting a little bit dated, and I think Schecter probably realised that. If you were going to rock one of the older Omens, you probably need a fringe like I had back in 2007. The Elite variation of the Omen attempts to bring the guitar right up to date with the look and features that us metal type dudes will be absolutely stoked for, but this guitar does miss the mark slightly on a couple of features. So let's have a little look at the specs. Brand new, this guitar cost me 539 quid, which puts it right in affordable territory. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that's downright reasonable for a guitar like this. But what does that amount of hard-earned cash actually get you? It's a bolt-on with a solid mahogany archtop body that's actually surprisingly light, maple neck and a rosewood board, all pretty classic appointments really. In terms of hardware, the bridge is a Schecter string-through unit which looks suspiciously like one of the models from one of the most popular rock and metal brands that you're seeing on guitars nowadays. It also has a Graphtec Tusk XL nut. Nice. But that's coupled with some pretty standard Schecter own brand tuners. Last but not least, in terms of electronics, we've got a pair of Schecter's own Diamond Heretic pickups, a 5-way selector switch, and then one volume, one tone. So what we're talking about is a guitar that takes a tried and true formula that we've all seen before and uses it to give the rock and metal dudes among us like a real workhorse for laying down those riffs. I reckon there's a lot to be said for a guitar that you can depend on to get the job done, but you do risk being a bit boring. I don't know about you, but I get attached to certain guitars. It's all about how they make me feel while I'm playing them, and even though this guitar doesn't necessarily break the mold in terms of specs, it puts a massive smile on my face by delivering what it promises: fat riffs. But let's talk about the finish for a minute, because it is hard not to just stare at it. I catch myself looking at it all the time just because it's one of the best looking guitars that I own. The burl underneath this absolutely epic blue burst is just, oh, chef's kiss. But it pops even harder because of the stained natural back and sides with black binding. Some of you might remember because I've said this before a couple of times, but the best looking guitars look great from the back as well, and I think this absolutely nails it. The other finishes too, a see-through red and what they call a charcoal but looks like a natural, they're both sick as well. Also, shout out to the person who decided this, but putting transparent bobbins on the pickups was just a top tier design choice, dude. Open coil pickups can look boring as hell in my opinion, but just this little bit of attention to detail like really sets off the whole vibe. The speed knobs are clear too, and I think they look awesome. Anyone else absolutely love clear plastics on things? In fact, when I modded my childhood Game Boy Advance, it had to have a transparent shell. The construction is solid as a rock too. Even the guy in the shop who gave it a check over when I went to go and pick it up was like, mate, the stuff coming out of Schecter nowadays is just bang on. And he's totally right. It feels like you could use this to like break a door down or something and it just wouldn't even flinch. I wouldn't advise that though, obviously. It's just so well put together that I've got absolutely no doubt that it could be used for years of gigs and touring and it just wouldn't give an inch. As well as that, the setup in QC has been pretty great. I haven't even wanted to set this up myself yet, and I've been playing it every day. This little sticker on the back here confirms that the Schecter QC and setup was all done. Usually, I wouldn't give a toss about that because I always get my guitars out of the box and then set them up how I like them anyway. But as it happens, this came out of the box, I liked it, and I've not even changed anything yet. The action's great, there's no buzz. It might be a touch higher than I would like it to be, and I might try and squeeze that little bit more out when I put my next set of strings on it, but honestly, doesn't really need it. So if all this is so good, then what's the problem? Well, one problem that you might have got clued into a little bit earlier on is that the tuners are absolutely god awful. They are 100% the least responsive tuners I've ever had on a guitar at any price point. Once they're in tune, they're fine, but actually getting them there is such a task. Sometimes it feels like you've given it a million turns and it's just done absolutely nothing. Usually I'd be like, that's the nut, but it's a self-lubricating Graphtec. That doesn't happen with these. Besides that, you can feel the irregular motion in the tuner when you turn it. Pairing a Graphtec nut with these tuners is like putting a laugh track on a Stevie T video. It can only do so much. Got him! Like I say, the guitar does hold its tune when it's there, and it's an easy and recommended upgrade when you consider what I'm going to talk about next. This thing plays really well. Obviously with it being a 7, the neck is wider anyway, but it's listed as having a thin C profile, which to me feels like it's somewhere between an Ibanez Wizard and a Fender C. It's definitely thin, but it's not as flat as a Wizard, and I think it's like a really good compromise. As well, the shape of the neck really helps with that common 7-string thing where you feel like you're holding a cricket bat in your hand, and it's finished in satin, so you get no horrible squeaky resistance while you're trying to move your hand up and down the neck. I'm finding this neck super comfortable to play for long periods of time, and it's not at all fatiguing like some necks, and you need barely any pressure to fret a note because of the jumbos, which, I mean, it was never going to have vintage fret wire, but it's worth mentioning because all these little details add up to a solid neck, which is then attached to a really comfortable body. Another thing to note though, just before I talk about the body, is that this is a 26.5-inch scale length. In my opinion, that is like the ideal scale length for an extended range instrument. The distance between frets does obviously feel wider than normal, but not to like a hugely noticeable degree, and it's definitely worth it for the string tension that you get. So, as your keen guitarist eyes might have already noticed, it's a Strat, innit? Obviously what I meant to say was a dual cutaway S-type guitar. It does differ from your traditional S-type body shape in a couple of ways. It's more angular on the edges and it has a really sick carved top, no arm bevel, but it feels just as comfortable as any Strat I've ever played. It's got the deep cutaways, the contour carves, the great balance when you're sitting or standing. It also improves on the regular Strat in my opinion by having this sweet contoured and angled neck heel. You see that? Which, yeah, is commonplace on most rock and metal guitars nowadays, but I don't think you should take it for granted. It really does make a massive difference. Now let's talk about the bridge a little bit, because although it's comfortable and it works well, I'm not entirely sold. I did mention earlier on in the video that it is a Schecter unit, but sort of hinted at the fact that it is meant to be like a hip shot bridge, which is like commonplace for metal guitars now. Even though that's the case, they have done a good job with it. It's a decent recreation, but there's just something about it that doesn't feel as high quality as like the original unit that it's based on. I am definitely being picky though, because it's unfair to ask a guitar at this price point to have a bridge on it that's worth like a fifth of the cost of the entire thing. I think the problem is that even though it's fitted to the guitar, it feels like it's quite low mass. I won't actually know for sure whether the bridge is lower mass than the original unless I decide to tweak it in the future, but that's like my little problem with the bridge. It's working well, it's comfortable, but it does feel like one of the areas that Schecter decided to compromise on to keep the cost down, just like the tuners. However, it's not all bad because I think that makes sense. These are two pieces of hardware that if it bothers you, and it probably won't, you can swap them out yourself for upgraded units for like quite low cost. Instead of going into tuners and bridges, your money obviously goes into construction and helping Schecter make a sick looking high quality guitar at like import prices, which I'd much rather they do. I reckon it was a good choice on their part, and I'll probably just swap the tuners out for something that I like. I do just quickly want to take a moment to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch an idiot like me talk about guitars. From the dudes who are seeing me for the first time in this video to the regular faces that I see in the comments often, I appreciate you all massively. I don't think I could describe with words what it means to me that this little channel actually matters to somebody. If you're enjoying this video and want to help it spread to other people, the absolute best thing you can do is just hit the like button. That lets YouTube know it was worth your time and passes it on to other awesome people like you. Also, I would absolutely love for you to stick around by becoming a subscriber. Anyway, thanks again dudes, you're awesome. Let's get back to it. So another thing that was a good call on Schecter's part are the pickups, because they deliver an absolutely killer passive tone. These are Diamond Heretic pickups, which is Schecter's own stab at like a high output articulate sounding metal humbucker. Although they look super fresh with the clear bobbins, that actually set alarm bells off initially. All I saw was like an own brand pickup trying its best to look cool. That sometimes means that like it's not the highest quality stuff. Well, I'll be the first to say that I was wrong about that, because these do look and sound the part. I'd say if I was going to compare them to anything, it would be some Seymour Duncans that I've tried, which I like a lot. These are like less biting and slightly lower output. At lower tunings, this has been in drop A since I got it. They provide a thick tone with enough clarity to stop everything sounding like mush. That is, provided you take the time to find an half decent tone, but that does apply to like pretty much every 7-string I've ever played. If you let your amp do the finessing, then these pickups are more than capable of doing the heavy lifting. The bridge pickup is tight and has plenty of aggression. Pinch arm on it squeal for days. The neck pickup is full and sounds expensive. It's perfect for modern metal playing. It's just a really good set of pickups. For me, if a guitar has great bones and I really like the way it plays, I always always think about the possibility of upgrading the pickups to put something in that's slightly more to my taste, but in this instance I don't really feel the need to. These are more than capable, and I'm going to be using them to track some solo music over the next few months, and I'm confident they'll absolutely nail it. So with that, it seems like the only reasonable thing to do now is just give you a demo. This guitar has thoroughly impressed me. Schecter do make some sick guitars, there's no doubt about that. The last one I had was a Nick Johnston Traditional, and that was an incredibly well made instrument, but it was a fair few £100 more expensive than this. With that in mind, I did wonder what compromises Schecter had to make to get such a great looking 7-string out of the door at what is a really affordable price. If you take a look at what other 7-strings are in the Elite's price range, there's really not that much competition, and I very much doubt the build quality or looks or whatever are going to be even nearly the same as this. Unless you really like black super strats. There's plenty of those. In the end, the compromises that Schecter did make only really feel like the bridge and the tuners to me, especially the tuners though. The bridge is definitely capable and comfortable even though it doesn't feel like the highest quality, but the tuners are a different story altogether. They all tune fine, but they are so unresponsive. Actually getting to pitch is just an absolute nightmare, man. But these two pieces of hardware are really the easiest things that you can upgrade yourself, and not for too much money. It makes sense for these to be the two areas that Schecter might cut back a little bit on, although I still don't really know how they managed to keep the price down so low. All my favourite guitars get tweaked for ease of use, and this thing hasn't left my hands since I bought it. It could be because the interval song that I'm learning at the moment is absolutely solid, but it might just be because this is a sick guitar. It feels awesome, it sounds great, and it's been the guitar to coax a few riffs out of me for some solo music that I've been putting off for like absolutely ages. That's gotta be a good thing. Thanks so much again, dudes. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope you found my ramblings interesting or at least a little bit entertaining. Let me know by hitting the like button, and you got this far, so you might as well subscribe too. I would be absolutely honoured. If you want to hear what I think about another solid metal guitar, you can click this video right here. Take care, mate. Stay safe. I'll see you later.